Hey there everyone, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. So we're going to be discussing Sony Marvel movies that are due to be released in 2024, and we're going to be talking about that phrase which keeps cropping up more and more often, superhero fatigue, and how it fits into what's going on with the superhero genre. So guys, if you are new around here, consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all the movie news going on this channel. But for now, we're going to jump into this comicbookmovie.com article. Will Sony Marvel movies doom the comic book genre amid continued claims of superhero fatigue? So, Sony Pictures will release Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, and Venom 3 in 2024, but will these Marvel movies do more harm to the genre than good, as critics continue to make claims about superhero fatigue? So guys, strap in and prepare yourselves, because there's a lot of reading, a lot of discussion going on in this video around the superhero fatigue and what's going on with the superhero genre in general. So prepare yourselves guys, but it's a really interesting kind of discussion as to what's going on and the decline of the superhero kind of industry when it comes to movies. Yeah, so there's been several videos now where I've talked about superhero fatigue. I absolutely believe it's a real thing. It's a very divisive term amongst the fan base when it comes to superhero movies. A lot of people are kind of like believe that it's a real thing. A lot of people don't. There's a lot of people defending that there's no such thing as superhero fatigue. But in my opinion, I believe there is. It's undeniable at this point. You look at DC, the last 7 to 8 movies made less than 400 million at the box office. Marvel and their Disney Plus shows, they're just on a downward trend. You know, nobody's watching them. People are fed up with it. And it absolutely shows, especially with what happened with, you know, the Captain Marvel movie recently that came out, The Marvels. Absolutely fell flat on his face. The worst Marvel film to ever come out. And I just think it's undeniable. I know there's a lot of people that are going to have a lot of different opinions, and that's fair. But with the Sony movies coming out in 2024, the trailers haven't exactly been well received. I don't hear a lot of buzz around, you know, Madam Web, Kraven, and, you know, the Venom movie. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it looks like they could end up damaging the brand of, you know, the superhero genre brand, not just for Marvel, but for DC as well. Because remember, when a bad Marvel movie comes out, it affects the superhero genre as a whole, not just the Marvel brand. It affects DC as well. If someone goes and watches a Marvel superhero film and it's bad, they're less likely to then turn up for a DC superhero movie. So it affects everyone in the long run. But let's have a read here, guys, and see what's going on. So, 2023 has been a hit and miss year for comic book movies, but will 2024 turn things around for a genre which finds itself besieged with claims of superhero fatigue? Again, that's a very divisive term. Whenever you post that in a comment section, you're going to have people fighting against each other, trust me. I've used that term a few times, and boy, did I get a bad response. But it is what it is, and if you agree or disagree, you know, that's your own opinion. It's become apparent that there are those hoping to will these adaptations out of existence, sending them the same way as westerns and romantic comedies. However, just like the DCEU and Marvel Studios, misfires have done little to help the genre this year. Can 3 Marvel movies from Sony Pictures in 2024 help? Or will they do even more harm to the place of superheroes in theaters? Yeah, I mean, if these movies come out, Venom, Madam Web, and Kraven, if they come out and these movies critically and financially bomb, like all 3 of them, or 2 out of 3, it's going to be so bad for the genre as a whole, man. It's going to put back the genre by years. You know, it's going to turn people off massively. I mean, the downward trend, like I say, is undeniable as it is. If people are even going to show up for these movies, you know, it's hard to tell at this point. But also we've got Deadpool 3 that could potentially turn it around. So we'll have to wait and see if Deadpool 3 can potentially save us, you know, as a kind of juxtaposition against these kind of Sony films. We'll have to wait and see what goes on. But if nobody turns up for Deadpool 3, then I think it's just definitive that the genre is probably dead at that point. Unfortunately, we believe it's the latter. Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, and Venom 3 are all heading our way over the next 12 months. And there are a great many reasons as to why we think they'll do little to help turn the tide. As I say, people don't seem to be interested in the trailers that much. You know, they don't like Madam Web. I think doesn't look that good at all. It looked really bad in my opinion. Kraven looks quite interesting. It's R-rated. It looks kind of gritty. You know, the fight scenes look fun. And Venom, there's a lot of people that are attached to the Venom character, so that's the most likely to do well at the box office, but we'll have to see. So in this feature, you'll find an in-depth analysis as to why these titles could be problematic and what it is about them, which will add weight to the argument. Moviegoers have grown tired of spandex-clad do-gooders. I like that. 2024 is set to be a pivotal year for Marvel and DC, but even in the wake of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse success, Sony is doing as much damage to its live-action characters as Fox did with the likes of Fantastic Four and Dark Phoenix. Man, they're held as probably 2 of the worst comic book films ever made, and they did do massive damage to those characters on the live screen. the live action version of those characters. So yeah, you can read our thoughts by clicking on next or blah blah blah. We don't need that. So, more multiverse madness. This is one of the massive things that people are so fed up with. You know, the multiverse just hasn't hit fans the way that Marvel expected it to. It's been convoluted. It's been kind of just all over the place, a bit of a mess. It's kind of been jarring for the fans. It's hard for people to stay up with what's going on. You know, what's the real universe? What's not the real universe? You know, it's been really modeled for audiences to kind of track. So, it's fair to say fans and regular moviegoers alike are sick to death for the multiverse. That's a problem for Marvel Studios when it's waist deep into the multiverse saga. And obviously, Madam Web is kind of like a multiversal character when it comes to the Spider-Verse characters. She kind of hops between dimensions. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of time traveling that seems to go on in this movie, as we saw with the trailer. So whether fans are going to be kind of fed up with the whole kind of time traveling aspect, and then this kind of weird generic Spider-Man character in the background, kind of popping in and out, whether people are going to get on board with that, we'll have to wait and see how that works out. So, we don't expect the writers behind Morbius to have a firm or particularly clever grasp on the multiverse concept, suggesting they'll find a way to screw it up. Yeah, when you've got writers behind Morbius, which was real bad. I mean, I enjoyed the Morbius character, and Jared Leto playing him was actually really good, but it's just a shame he was in a bad movie. Yeah, it doesn't give much faith for audiences, the fact that the Morbius writers are going to be behind this Madam Web movie. And, you know, that's not to say that they couldn't do a good job, but it doesn't instill much confidence. So, on the plus side, Madam Web appears to be a relatively simple story about someone from the future setting out to kill people, who he believes eventually murder him, providing Sony keeps it simple and doesn't start trying to find ways to explain Spider-Man's absence or tie in the story into the MCU. Yeah, I mean, that can get really complicated and modeled really quickly. When you have time travel or multiverse in your movie, you need to try and keep it simple, keep it streamlined so people can follow it clearly. But when you start trying to explain kind of why Spider-Man's not there or tying it into the MCU, which we don't really need to do, it can just be a standalone story. It doesn't need to have ties to the MCU. It can get really messy really quick. The plot holes can start developing. It can get really jarring for audiences. You know, when you start trying to tie it into the MCU, it can start forming these kind of big plot holes. You know, well, if it's connected to this, why didn't this happen or why didn't that happen? And it can become really messy. So I think they should just stay detached from the MCU and kind of tell a standalone story. They don't need to reference the MCU. You can have little Easter eggs here and there, but that's all you need to do, really. So unfortunately, it's hard to shake the feeling that this movie will justify all those complaints about the multiverse storytelling having outstayed its welcome. Absolutely. People can't wait to get back to the kind of street level kind of storytelling where you kind of have just a grounded story that actually makes sense with a kind of a villain, not this kind of multiverse where you're kind of traveling through portals to other multiverses, and it's too convoluted. People don't follow it. It seems a bit kind of silly and childish sometimes, and I think people just prefer the more grounded kind of approach. So Morbius all over again. Oh god, if Kraven comes out and is received like Morbius, man, we're in trouble, I tell you. So we don't have a huge amount of faith in the writing team behind team of Richard Wenk, The Expendables, and Art Markham and Matt Holloway. They penned Iron Man, but also Punisher Warzone. Obviously Punisher Warzone wasn't, people didn't care about that movie whatsoever. That movie feels like a fitting comparison because it's yet another Spider-Man villain who is getting an origin story without the wall crawler. On the one hand, that's for the best, particularly when we know Sony can't handle Peter Parker without Marvel Studios. I feel like Kraven is a great character to do a movie on, but I think that you need to have Spider-Man to kind of play him off of, and I don't feel like he needs an origin story. I feel like it's a character that we can kind of just go straight into, like full steam ahead. Like, a lot of people are not that familiar with Kraven. I mean, he's in the games. He's in the latest Spider-Man game, I know, but a lot of people aren't that familiar with him. I think that you can just go full into a story with him against Spider-Man. And I think that doing an origin story is kind of unnecessary and it's taking up a lot of time that we don't really need to do. But as I say, it's an R-rated movie. The action scenes look cool. So, whether they can stick the landing, we'll have to wait and see. On the other hand, Kraven without Spider-Man is just boring. Yeah, I mean, that's a statement that could be true, but we haven't seen the movie, so it's hard to tell at this point. They said the same about, the Verse Venom movie. How are you going to do Venom without Spider-Man? But yet they pulled it off. So, there's always a chance they could do it right. Yes, the R-rated action might lead to a few gore-heavy highlights, but between the fact that this origin story feels wholly unnecessary, which is what I was just saying, it does feel unnecessary, and the liberties being taken without the comics. Rhino will be a man who transforms into a Rocksteady-like mutant. We're not getting good vibes at all. Yeah, like I say, a lot of people saw the trailer. They had problems with it. They thought that, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't that exciting. It's kind of an unnecessary origin story to a character that isn't really needed, that nobody's asking for. But again, we'll have to see how it goes. You never know. It could surprise us like the first Venom did. So, Venom gonna Venom. I like that. At this stage, the Venom franchise is what it is. If Andy Serkis couldn't really change it for the better, then we doubt the woman who wrote the first 2 installments and helms the threequel, Kelly Marcel, will. However, all of the movies we focused on here, it does stand the greatest chance of finding box office success. Yeah, I absolutely would say it would. Of all the Spider-Man villains out there, Venom has got to be the strongest villain. And, people seem to be attached to the Venom character, and, the Venom movies have done really well financially and critically. And people seem to be attached to the Venom character. I think that's because people are anticipating the connection between Venom and Spider-Man and potentially seeing that fight scene happen. And I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to the Venom character. But Venom is supposed to be a villain character, yet he's portrayed as this kind of like anti-hero. And I think that's the wrong approach. He's a villain. We need to have a full-on villain version of Venom, not this kind of anti-hero do-gooder version of Venom. I don't really like that very much. It would be refreshing for Venom to fight someone other than a villainous symbiote. Yeah, that's the thing as well. When it's just Venom kind of fighting the kind of same version of himself, it's just a symbiote fighting a symbiote. It kind of gets boring after a while. It's like, can we have Venom fight someone other than a symbiote? Somebody else. Like we could have a Venom and a kind of a Kraven fighting each other. That would be a really interesting movie. I think that's a movie they should have done in the first place. Instead of having a Kraven movie, they should have had this Venom movie, and they should have put Kraven as the villain to Venom. They should have had, like The Greatest Hunt, where Kraven is trying to hunt down, the Venom symbiote. That would have been really fun. Instead of just doing a standalone Kraven movie. Which probably means we can expect to see him battle Toxin. Yeah, again, symbiote fighting another symbiote. We've already seen that several times at this point, so we don't really need to see it again. As I say, another generic movie that we've seen before. And yeah, whether people are going to get fed up with it. So, the Wall Crawler has only truly soared with Marvel Studios' input. And every one of those spin-offs, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, has underwhelmed. There's no reason to suspect 2024 will change that. Have you watched the trailers for Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter? Yeah, I've seen both of those. Madam Web looks generic as anything. I really don't have any interest in Madam Web. Kraven the Hunter, as I say, is more R-rated, more gritty, kind of gory. That definitely piques my interest. I don't think it's going to do well financially, but I'm interested to see it. I'm going to give it a chance anyway. So, whether or not having access to Spider-Man is the issue, or producers like Matt Tolmach or Avi Arad making movies with an outdated mindset that would make them a better fit for 2005 is up for debate. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, these movies, right? If you released them back in the early 2000s, they would be considered good movies. But because we've had the Infinity Saga now, and the quality was so high for that saga, everything else kind of pales in comparison. If the quality isn't on the same level as what the Infinity Saga was, everything else just seems to be, just kind of in the gutter. Like, nothing seems to be as good as what we got back then. And by comparison, we're just kind of, phoning in what's going on with Marvel at the moment, and we're kind of just sat there like, why are you giving us this trash when we used to get really good stuff? And now this is just like an afterthought. It doesn't seem as good. Maybe they'll surprise us with the Spunk. I like that, Spunk. Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. We'll save the genre, or perhaps it will doom it. Either way, it could be down to the 2 R-rated comic book movies, Deadpool 3 and Joker Folie à Deux, to help us counteract the potential damage for these blockbusters end up doing. Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, the first Joker made over $1 billion, I believe. And obviously the Deadpool character is probably one of the most popular comic book characters that there is. So these two movies could absolutely counteract the Sony movies when they come out. But if the Sony movies come out and they absolutely bomb critically and financially, it's just going to offset the genre, and people are going to be fed up, and they're less likely to go out and see Deadpool and Joker if they don't like the Sony movies. So it could have a knock-on effect to Deadpool and Joker. We'll have to wait and see. But if Deadpool 3 comes out and Joker comes out and they both critically and financially bomb, then I think it's about time that we start talking about, the genre being dead, potentially at that point. But I can't see both of those movies bombing. If they did, then that's a whole nother discussion that we need to have at that point. But yeah, guys, there we are. So we're talking a bit about, the Sony movies coming out and the potential damage that they could cause to the genre if they critically and financially bomb. But, Joker and Deadpool could turn that around. But then I say, if the Sony movies cause so much damage that people don't go out and see Deadpool or Joker, then I have no idea where the genre goes from this point. Maybe it has to be put on the shelf for a few years, and then maybe people miss it, for 10 or 15 years, and then the superhero genre can come back after that. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But guys, jump into the comment section. Let me know what you think about this. What do you think is going to happen if these Sony movies come out and they bomb critically and financially? Do you think that's the end of the superhero genre? Or, do you think Deadpool and Joker can save it? Or do you think those movies are going to bomb too? Let me know what you think, guys. Jump into the comment section. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and your takes on this situation. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.